watching Numbskull News, and today I'm going to talk about the ACC, FSU, and Clemson negotiations. And I wanted to put some clarification on my last video. It was a long video. It really was. I was trying to pump out as much of my speculation and information as possible. And, you know, typically people only watch my videos for the first 5-6 minutes or so. That's kind of a standard kind of thing here on YouTube. But with that one, you know, I think my average views are between 10 and 10.5 minutes, which is pretty damn good. Unfortunately, it's like a 26-minute video or whatever it was. So it was long. It was long. So I think I need to clarify a few things in case that was a little rough on you guys. And if you didn't see the last video, I'll put a link at the end. There'll be a little deal down here at the end of the video so that you can watch it if you care to. Okay. This is all about a negotiated settlement. We're talking about the Josh Pate speculation or stuff he threw out there about the ACC being screwed, going to lose a ton of teams, completely have to rebuild or repackage or whatever word he used. But I'm just going to use rebuild. They're going to have to rebuild it because it's going to get torn apart. Now, I agree with some of that. And then I did a video, of course, my last video, which was the controlled demolition of the ACC. And the reason I use that verbiage, because it is a controlled demolition. And then what do they do after they demolish a building? They build a new one. All right. It's just probably not going to be as big and as nice. Okay. It's going to be a little smaller, maybe a little more environmentally friendly building. But this is going to be some complicated shit because once the Florida State and dominoes fall, then there's a bunch of problems that all of a sudden pop up. All right. UNC, Miami, the two teams after them, probably with the most value. How much money are they going to be willing to make or not make? And then you're going to have further problems down the trough once you start losing CFP money, ACC network money, and media rights money, plus corporate sponsors that may pull out or want a better deal without Florida State and Clemson because you're not getting as many eyeballs on your product when you're advertising with this particular conference. That's a problem. And we know that there was at least one board of trustee with UNC that was just not happy with the way things are going in the ACC. Talking about we may need to get out of here and get to a conference where we're making more money. We can't do the less money. Not with revenue sharing and everything else breathing down your neck. Now, that negotiation will have to involve ESPN. ESPN has a big card to play. Okay? So, whoever is going to be left in the ACC, they need to make sure they got a media contract with ESPN until 2036. Why ESPN? Because they're the current rights holder, but it's also, you know, when you're talking about broadcasting and distributing your sports, your product, right now and probably into the future, ESPN is going to be the best place, the best distributor of your product. So they want to stay with them. They don't want to have to end up on CW like the Pac-2 is doing right now. They don't want that. They want ESPN. Can't blame them. However, what's the dollar amount that they're going to get paid? That's going to be difficult to work out. Because, like I said, as you lose members, you're going to lose revenue overall for the conference. And one of the things I need to clarify is that everybody at every level of the ACC, because there's multiple levels. You got the Florida State Clemson level. You got the UNC Miami level. Then you got your mid-tier guys, your Louisvilles, your Pitts, your Virginia Techs. Yeah, Virginia's a mid-tier brand, football-wise. You know, we're not building educational conferences. We're not talking about spending money, taking a road trip to see your team in a spelling bee or a math playoff of some kind. We're talking football. We're talking basketball. So those mid-tier brands, they're going to want to make a certain amount of money. They want to be competitive. Then you have your smaller brands in there. And at each level, everyone at that level they have some leverage. Because if nobody signs on, as far as Florida State and Clemson, because once there's a negotiated settlement between Jim Phillips and the heads of the ACC, the guys in the conference offices, those two schools, and ESPN, well, the ACC will need its member schools to say, okay, good deal. Because if they vote down, then that negotiation was for nothing and it's not going to pass, and the ACC can't sign off on it. You have to have the member schools cool with it. They have to vote yay. All right, the vast majority of them have to vote yay. So you got to get people on every level to agree. And everyone's going to ask for something. The lower level guys, it's real easy. They want security until 2036. That's something ESPN can offer to entice them. That's not the only thing they're going to want, but that's the main thing they're going to want. The next teams up is UNC and Miami. Do they want to stay in a diminished conference? You say, well, there's payout money. It doesn't matter. They're going to want to see if they can get to the Big Ten and the SEC. Now, maybe ESPN can say, hey, y'all aren't coming to the SEC. They can just flat out tell them, we're not going to pay for it. And by the way, let's not forget, it has been well reported that the SEC and the Big Ten aren't exactly monstrously excited about a lot more expansion. They're not. Now, if Fox is really on board with it, if ESPN with the SEC is really on board with it, then it'll happen. I do know the SEC pro rata is 2 teams at a time. And I can guarantee you they don't want anything more than 2 teams. Those 2 big conferences, they kind of want to pump the brakes on this shit right now. Let's see what the money actually looks like. Let's hold off on the spending and the moving and the shaking. Let's see what we got here. Let's build up the savings account. And then let's go for the big purchase if we're going to make one. But regardless of who goes where, who wants what, blah, 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 you got to satisfy everybody down the line. This whole thought of, and it's been out there for a long time, the 8 teams it would take to dissolve the conference. Horse shit. If all it took was 8 teams, you would have got it done already. But no, you're going to have every swinging D on board to make this thing really happen. After Miami and UNC, find out where can we go type of deal. Well, then you have to get your mid-tier schools on board. And I guarantee you, without your top 4, those mid-tier teams, they don't want to stay in this conference. Because Louisville, I have a feeling the people who run Louisville, President, AD, and all that, they know if them and Virginia Tech, maybe Pitt are the most powerful schools in the conference, what kind of money are you going to make? It's not going to be a ton. It's not going to be a ton. So, a school like Louisville is going to say, get us the hell out of there. We'll take a full share from the Big 12. They're stable. Brett Yormark seems to be on point being a commissioner. The big-time basketball conference. The fun football conference. We'll go there. It's fine. We'll deal with it over there. A lot of talk, well, Virginia would never go. Virginia wants to be solidified somewhere. And if the AC, just like the PAC, if it looks like the PAC's going to spin apart, then there's trouble. Because what happened, all right, Colorado at the time was they're mid-tier. At one time in their existence they were a much higher tier brand, but after their time in the pack, they became mid-tier. They left before Oregon and Washington did. Remember that, kids. So just because Miami and UNC may be having to work things out with a board of governors or mulling things over, whatever, doesn't mean Louisville isn't going to say, well, screw this in the negotiation. Get us to the Big 12. We don't want to be here anymore. Because there is a third option. It's not just the Big 2. Like I said, there's not going to be a lot more expansion with them. There's a third option of the Big 12. And there's plenty of teams in the ACC that'll say, yeah, we'll do that. Versus whatever middling shit you want to do here. Whatever smoke and mirrors to get us paid. Nah, we'd rather go someplace. We know what we got year to year. We know it's a steady conference. It's going to be around for a long time. We'd rather do that. Here's my thought process, what I was talking about in the last video. A negotiated buyout for Florida State and Clemson. I think $250 million per school is probably a reasonable number. And probably one they'd be willing to pay to get out. However, there's a lot of mouths to feed. That $500 total million for 11 years. Let's say if Florida State and Clemson leave and join, let's say, the SEC in 2025, that leaves 11 years till 2036. That money spread out through the rest of the teams, split up, because it's going to, each one, they're not going to be paying $250 million all up front. They're going to pay us whatever that percentage amount is for the 11 years. All right, so it's not all at once. It's going to be 11 years worth of paychecks for the ACC. And so that $500 million combined with that many teams, it's not that much money. It's not that much money. I don't think it'll be enough to entice anyone to stay in there. And then you have to think, okay, well, what happens after 2036? You know, what kind of TV deal could we get? Are we still going to be way down past the Big 12? Probably. And that's a problem. So you have to look down the road, especially if you're those mid-tier brands. You got to set yourself up for the long term. This isn't about short-term gains. So FSU and Clemson probably agree to somewhere around $250 million. Now, the war chest the Big 12 is going to have to be able to help these teams get into the Big 12 and pay those buyouts, they're not. It's not going to go very far as $250 million per team. So what will happen for the mid-tier brands, maybe even for UNC and Miami, is that they agree to stay in the ACC longer. We're talking 2027, 2028, 2029. And they are allowed to cut out, let's say, for half of what the other two. So 125 million, 120 million, somewhere near the current exit fee for the ACC. And that's still a lot of money if you're talking UNC, Miami leaving, Louisville leaving, Virginia Tech, Duke. I mean, that's 6 schools right there. Now you got to get Fox on board. You just do. You got to get Fox on board, because if now you need to transfer some of those teams who are just not going to agree with anything that's going to be less money for being in the ACC, and there's going to be a problem down the road. Call it a balloon payment if you want to, at the end of 2036, where now you got to pay the piper, because now you got to find a whole new media rights deal, and ESPN may not be interested at that time. Or they may be interested, but at a much lower rate than the Big 12. So you got to get Fox on board, and Fox has leverage. As I said in the last video, they got involved with the Big 12, or stayed involved with the Big 12, because of basketball. You know, and because of parity with football. But basketball was the number one, was the key. Fox, you want me to approve our part of the pro rata because they don't have to. It's a case by case basis. We want the best basketball programs out of the ACC. That doesn't include Florida State or Clemson. We want the best basketball. What we would really want is UNC and Duke, the biggest, brightest, most viewership as far as any college basketball regular season game. That rivalry generates more viewership than any of them. Every time it's played, more viewership. If I'm Fox, I want to see that game on Big Daddy Fox. That's what I want. So if you want our help, that's their leverage. We want even more Boffo basketball. So if you want us to approve pro rata and come in, and it's like $10 or $11 million a year right now, I think that's what they're going to want. Not Big 10, they're going to want it in the Big 12 because it's cheaper. ESPN will have no problem with that as far as UNC and Duke because they don't want to have to pay SEC prices. Fox doesn't want to have to pay Big 10 prices. And you could say, well, the SEC and the Big 10 really, really, really want UNC. Maybe they do. Let me just go ahead. I don't agree that everybody in those two conferences want them because I know Texas and Oklahoma a little bit, and I don't think they're big on UNC coming in. Anyway, I digress. But let's say the two, Petiti, Sankey, really want them, really want UNC. We know there's people within both conferences that have wanted UNC for decades in those two conferences. But it comes down to your media partner. What do they want? They'll have a sit down like in The Sopranos. People, and you'll have the SEC like, hey man, we want UNC. That's our number one priority. All right, let's say that's Sankey and a few other people. If I'm ESPN, I'm like, fellas, we don't want you to add them. That's really going to piss us off. All right, we don't want them in this conference. And we already know Fox doesn't want them there. Us and Fox, we want them in the Big 12 because it's cheaper for us and we get the great content. We won't mind working together so we can both benefit. But we don't want to pay SEC prices for that school. This is what people are choosing to ignore. What ESPN wants. The SEC, whether they like it or not, they are a football conference first. That is the sole reason they are getting paid. Because of the dominance in football. And that's perfectly fine. They make an ass ton of money with that. I mean, look, the value of basketball is supposed to shoot up. But ESPN is not going to be willing to throw in that kind of money on what should happen. Speculation. Making a bet, in other words. They want to bet on sure things. They got the SEC pop right around where they want it. It generates a shit ton of viewership. Shit ton of interest. Shit ton of brand value. If you bring in Florida State and Clemson, that's primo matchups all over the place. As a matter of fact, if I'm the SEC, all right, I'm not going to fight for UNC. What I'm going to fight for is to make extra money off of a ninth conference game for all of my members. So if you want us to take Florida State and Clemson and leave UNC out, which I believe ESPN will, then we want the money for the ninth conference game for everybody. You're going to have to up this shit right now. Or in the next year or two or whatever it is. And I believe ESPN, if you want Florida State and Clemson in the conference, that's what you're going to have to do. But like I said, if you look at that, everybody's got leverage through this thing. Everybody does. And on a certain level, so does the Big 12. Because if you need us to take teams, we should have a pick a little bit. We should get to pick something, Florida State, Clemson, ESPN saying that's not for you. Maybe, then there's Miami. We'll definitely ask about Miami. Well, how about Miami? Can we get Miami? Maybe the Big Ten says, look, you can have them for now. Maybe later on, once we get Notre Dame, maybe then we'll give them an invite or they'll work their way over here. I don't know. Or they'll say, you know what, we'll just go ahead and take them right now. Again, I don't know. But as far as University of North Carolina, y'all know me. I'm pretty dead set on that. Everything makes sense. But the two big media partners are going to want them in the Big 12. The smaller schools, yeah, they're going to want to be secure till 2036 with ESPN. The dollar amount can be lower, that's fine. Here's the thing. Right now, the current media deal, they have to maintain a certain number of schools, right? ESPN can waive all that. They can rip that right out of the contract. They can rewrite it. All this stuff with the rebuild thing, it doesn't have to be the current ESPN deal. They could find a way to rework all that. It's part of the negotiation, folks. It's part of the negotiation. If the Big 12 takes 6 and Miami's gone and Florida State, Clemson gone, that basically we'll be left with 8. Even Notre Dame gone. Okay? We still got 8 schools. How about we just add 2 more? Whatever that is. Whatever that looks like. We want to just be a 10-team conference. And we all play each other every year. 10-team conference. That could work. That could very well work for ESPN. 10-team conference, let's say $16, $17, $18 million a year per. Plus, you have all of the buyout money from all of these schools that have left. So that's quite a bit of money. And now you're only having to split it 10 ways. Think about that. Trust me, though, smaller, if you're getting down to the minutia, trying to get all these people on board to make this move, because in one fell swoop, you could clean house and get all of this shit settled. The schools that are going to the Big 10 and the SEC, they go. The schools that go to the Big 12, they're gone. The schools that remain you can backfill and secure them till 2036. And with all the buyout money, they'll make pretty close to what the Big 12 do per school until 2036. So they'll be fine. And any school they invite on the G5 level, including the Pac-2, Oregon State and Washington State, anybody would join for that right now. Anybody would join for that right now, regardless of whatever they're facing. They'll do it in a minute. To me, that's my speculation. That's kind of what I feel Josh Pate was talking about. I feel that that's what's being worked on. Trying to satisfy everybody from the top schools of the ACC all the way down to the bottom. And plus other trading partners you may need to bring in. Fox with the Big 10. Fox with their part of the Big 12 media rights. All of that. Or they're part of the pro rata. There's a lot of people that you got to make right. A lot of them. So that everyone's on board, smooth transition, everything happens. You're left with 8 schools, and they can quickly backfill with whomever they would like. That's the clarification. Sorry it took so damn long. Anyway. Shit. Thanks for watching this crap, and I'll be back with some more crap later. Bye-bye.